If there's one faction we all love in 40k, it's the Mechanicus. And honestly, I don't see what's not to love. It's just a bunch of crazy religious nutjobs making themselves cool robot bodies, and just all in all being real weird. Their characters are fun, and they're really just a delight in any story they show up in, and they have some of the most fun lore ever. The crossover of Christian monk, gothic techno-punk is a real vibe. It's the whole deal of why the Mechanicus video game is such a fun time. As anyone tells you, the music rules. I never thought pipe organ dubstep would rule, but it does. But you know what? Those are a bunch of phonies, a bunch of fakes, because we gotta talk about the true Mechanicus, the new Mechanicum, or as they're most often called, the Dark Mechanicum, which are another faction absolutely beloved, but are completely ignored by Games Workshop for some reason. I don't have a clue why. They're really fun. Because what's not to love about the Mechanicus but chaos? Thank you to all my channel members for making these videos possible, and a special shout out to Christian Voorhees for subscribing at the highest level. This level of support truly helps the channel, so it is greatly appreciated. So the Dark Mechanicum got their start right at the beginning of the Horus Heresy, and honestly, if you want to hear about its development firsthand in the best way possible, just go read the book Mechanicum. It's actually really good. I'm a big fan of it. It's one of the few really good Horus Heresy books, and is honestly, if you want to get a really good primer on the Mechanicus and the Titan Legions, it's a great start. But it started as a power move when he secured the loyalty of a powerful sect on Mars by promising them a lost STC device and promising them to open a forbidden vault on Mars that was sealed away by the Emperor a long-ass time ago. This is something a lot of them were really cross about because the Emperor arrived on Mars, conquered them, and basically just became the Omnissiah. A lot of them weren't cool with this. Granted, they weren't militarily conquered, but they preferred to be independently ran. This faction gained a lot of power and was led by the Fabricator General himself. It was a pretty big deal with a lot of power. And this led to a large event known as the Schism of Mars, where this Horus-aligned faction went full chaos, like full evil powers, full traitor. It got real spooky, real dark, real fast. And it also just follows the exact same trajectory as the traitor forces during the Horus Heresy. If you want to picture their history, really just picture the entire history of like Horus and his boys, but just imagine that there's a spooky dude in red, like a robot, standing right next to him. Pretty much just that. Alongside just, being evil and chaosy, they also supplied the traitor forces with a lot of their equipment, and eventually, after the Siege of Terra actually went and happened, and the traitor force was sent packing, they went off and ran into the warp during the Great Scouring, where they mainly set up and still are today. Though I guess, now that they're all in the warp, I really should define where the Dark Mechanicum differs from the regular Mechanicus, other than the obvious Chaos Allegiance part, because that's kind of right up in the forefront. Now it does depend on which specific cult we're talking about, because this is Chaos after all. If it was really one codified group, this wouldn't really be Chaos. That's not how they roll. That, and I mean, are we really gonna pretend that the loyal Mechanicus is really that coherent either? It really reads more like after the Horus Heresy ended, the Dark Mechanicum stopped being one codified group, like underneath the Fabricator General, and instead, it became a large catch-all term for Chaos-aligned heretics. Now, please note my pronunciation there because it does matter. Heretic is a term of those members who were determined as heretics of the cult of the machine god for literally whatever reason. Maybe they actually did align with Chaos. Maybe they just use Xenos tech. Maybe they like some Eldar Wraithbone. Maybe they might have mingled a little bit with Necron stuff. Who knows? Maybe they just decided to invent something. Maybe they like AI. It doesn't fully mean that they are Chaos aligned. It just means that they are not part of the Mechanicus anymore. It's pretty simple like that. Not every heretic is a member of the Dark Mechanicum, but every member of the Dark Mechanicum is a heretic, if that makes sense. Some wikis classify it a little incorrectly. I want to clear that up. But the main thing that sets them apart is that Dark Mechanicum believes that the Emperor is a false Omnissiah, and also it's only through Chaos that they can reach true knowledge. Typical Chaos stuff. They exercise this belief by really just fucking with humans. God, they really, really like messing with people. They like building tech that specifically is meant to torment humanity, torture people, inflict a lot of pain and terror in the worst ways they can conceive of. It's pretty rough. They also organize under a lot of different ways. They have their own cults, like many different groups that they all group themselves under. They also have corrupted forge worlds, all known as Hell Forges. They still work with Titan and Night Legions. Basically, if you can see how the Mechanicus operates, just add the word dark or chaos in front of it. It's basically the same. This is the method that chaos units can situate themselves in the exact same way as the loyalists. They do this in all an evil way, and instead of just maintaining everything, they instead create horrible chaos-infused tech, and especially demon engines and weapons. Good golly, does Dark Mechanicum tech get really wild really fast? I gotta show you some of the fun stuff. It's really fun. I went down a fun, good old rabbit hole because it's something I like doing on this channel. I love just figuring out what unique tech each kind of faction has. Alright, so just a list of some of the cool stuff I found. Starting off strong with 2 pieces of Dark Age humanity tech. The first one, the Silica Animus, is just a method of creating artificial intelligence, because of course, when you shut off the crippling shackles of the Mechanicus, the first thing you do, you make yourself the abominable intelligence. And then you have the Anima Mori, which is a method of preventing death, but in the goofy, evil way. Why prevent death when you can use it to make zombies? It's primarily what they use. They reanimate the dead with it. Some other fun stuff they have. They have things like the Berserker Thorn, which is a piece of equipment they use to specifically corrupt machine spirits, make them go into a rage state so they can act against their masters. It's pretty obvious based on its name, not really that crazy. They also have a really fun sword known as the Empiric Conduit Blade. This is a warp-based sword that's basically a reverse power sword. Normally a power sword is charged with like psychic energy. This sword instead is charged with null energy. Now the Dark Mechanicum deals with demons and demon engines a lot, so when a demon starts kind of acting out of whack, they gotta use a sword like this to permanently kill a demon, which is a scary concept. I also say this because in the wording of the sword, it does specifically use the phrasing of annihilate and destroy. It does not say things like normally, banish it, send it back to the warp, because that's what happens when you kill a warp being. Sends them back to the warp. The verbiage does kind of sound like this thing permanently kills a demon. There's another horrifying piece of tech known as the Oblivion Vators. This one is made purely because they know firsthand that the Imperium really likes souls. Like I said, they're petty and very mean. Imagine a worse version of a servitor, but like worse to the victim, not like worse in function. So they slap this funny little doohickey on your head and it just actually obliterates your soul, like deletes it. Maybe just not deletes it because that does take a lot of energy, but it does deny your soul from ever reaching whatever realm in the warp the Emperor would claim your Imperial soul, at least according to Imperial dogma. This turns you into something known as an Obliviate, which is a blank slate of a person that they fully augment you with weapons and just use you as basically an attack dog. They just slap a bunch of weapons and like attack whips and then just send you forward. Specifically against people that they also want to turn into these Obliviates. It is a terror troop with a lot of emotional baggage behind it. It's pretty fucking rough. And lastly, something I do want to mention is the concept of scrap code. This comes up a lot. This is a self-replicating computer virus that gets into literally every system possible. I'm talking communication, data packets, anything you can think of. It gets into these systems, self-replicates, and clogs up everything. So imagine you're a tech priest and you get like a nice little email. You open up the email, it's hit with scrap code, and now your data banks are getting filled up with this scrap code till eventually it's so clogged up all your systems are slowing down, they're starting to fail, and it's hard to actually do anything and process literally anything. And it's also being transferred to every other system you have connected to you and so on as the system spreads planet-wide. It's pretty bad. And also made worse, it's got just a tinge of chaos. Just a little bit of chaos corruption. So it's not fun. It is important to note, however, this isn't like the most powerful of weapons, except for the first time they ever used it, right during the Schism of Mars, right at the beginning of the Horus Heresy. Like I said in the book Mechanicum, this is the first time they used this thing. It was pretty powerful when this first popped up, mainly because no one knew what the fuck was happening. So, moment of surprise, everyone gets freaked out. But as a passive warfare tool, it works incredibly well because you just send out the scrap code, and now all your enemies have to shut off their equipment. Because that's the way you combat scrap code, is you shut everything down into secure channels where you know it's not going to get infected or hasn't been infected yet. But now it's harder to work and harder to do things. You've made their lives harder for free. It's just handy. So yeah, that's just the Dark Mechanicum. I think it's pretty fun, and yeah, sadly they are pretty forgotten when it comes to Game Workshop. We haven't actually had anything Dark Mechanicum show up in the tabletop game since 7th edition. The closest even adjacent thing is Vashtor the Archfane, who is a okay character and also is barely considered Dark Mechanicum. He's just a warp entity who wants to become a Chaos God. So like, he wouldn't even classify himself as Dark Mechanicum. I wouldn't say it counts, personally. It's sad, because they're very cool. They got a lot of fun stuff, a lot of fun weapons. I don't see why they can't have at least a little presence inside of like Chaos armies. It's sad, because they're so cool. But yeah, that's honestly about it. So if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff, join my membership, and see ya.